Welcome everybody. Welcome to our session today, the first E2Wealthier session. And thank you to Kristel, Meenal, Maria and Jade for helping put this together. You'll notice I'm on the sofa by myself today because Nikki has got some other things going, but I'm joined beautifully by Kristel. Thank you, Kristel. Over to you just to do some quick introductions.
Sure, great. Thank you, Mark, and welcome everyone. Really great to see everyone on the call, and just the fact that you are here this afternoon just goes to show really as to you know, how much value you put in terms of your personal finance. So I'm just going to say a few words really in terms of where, how this has all come about. Because when I was thinking about this the other day, in terms of wealth creation and wealth building, the phrase and the title, dig your well before you're thirsty, really sprung to mind. And as, as women we are, and talking to a lot of the members and non-members as well, we are just so giving in terms of our time, in terms of what we give to our bosses, to our family, our friends, our spouse. And yet, how much time do we actually put to investing in ourselves and our personal finances? And who, just a question to get us started really. I mean, who in the audience like organises the family holiday or the girly holiday? I don't know who. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of you. I mean, we spend so much time just researching this, checking out all the good reviews on TripAdvisor, seeing all those beautiful sunset pictures, the crashing waves. And yet how much time do we actually spend in terms of researching and investing in terms of what's an informed choice for us? And how do we optimize our earnings? Because it's as much as how much, what is our earning power, but also in terms of how much of that earning power we actually get to keep at the end of the month, at the end of the year. So this is really how E2Wealthier has been born. Our mission is really to help ourselves and to help you ladies in terms of making informed choices about securing our financial futures and for those who are most important to us. So with that, I'll just actually just hand over to Maria, because I noticed that she also wants to say a few words, because this has actually been born out of Maria's brainchild. So we've got to thank Maria actually. So so yes, Maria, if you just wouldn't mind just saying a few words before we introduce our guests. You got to take yourself off mute, huh? There you go. Can we all lip read, everyone? Great.
Thank you, Kristel, and thank you, ladies, for being here. I'm very happy that my chat about the gender investment gap sparked so much interest, and this is the first follow-up, hopefully just the first of many. I want to ask you a couple of questions, and I want you to think about them while you're listening to our guest presentation. Can you imagine a business that is being run without financial statements, financial reporting, financial documentation, and financial planning, most of all? You probably can't. So if you can't do that, why is it so normal for so many of us to run our personal finances without budgeting and planning? Ask yourself that. I want you to think about running your personal stuff as a small business, looking at your financials as a small business, and knowing that you need to put some work and some planning into that. In case your husband is taking care about the financial stuff, investments and planning, please at least learn about this, because every woman at least once in her life is going to be in charge of her own financial stuff. So remember that a man is not a plan, and take some charge about this, even if it's just learning what your husband's doing and how he's doing it. So having said this, I think this was my entire message for today. I'm going to hand over to our guests. First, Cynthia from Raymond James.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Maria, and thanks to everyone for asking us to be with you today. It's nice to see another Cynthia in the group, too. I don't run into many. To introduce myself, my name is Cynthia Poole, and I'm with Raymond James, which is a firm here in the city that really focuses on wealth management, investment banking, and equity capital market sales. And James Johnson, my colleague, and I represent the wealth management side of the business. Now, I've worked in the financial services industry for over 30 years. I'm embarrassed to admit the number of years. And I started initially in corporate banking in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm from in the US, and in New York. And then after moving to London over 20 years ago, I've been with Raymond James for most of that time, really focused in the wealth management sector. But throughout that time, and particularly initially, I just couldn't find time to take care of myself, as Maria was saying, and Kristel was saying, to start taking care of my own personal finances, which is a terrible thing to say for someone in the wealth management business. Take care of everybody else and not yourself. And we're all leading such busy lives with our families and our friends and our work that it's tricky to find the time to review our own savings plan, our own financial plan. But we're here today, and James is the expert, to be able to talk about some very quick and simple and straightforward steps we can all take to do three things. First, to save early, because saving early starts making all the difference because of the length of time we have to invest. And the next is to save well, and that means tax effectively. We will do more for our investment returns by saving in the right tax structures than we do on investment returns. It's really an important piece. And what are we trying to do? We're trying to secure our future and the future of our families. So to give us some of these quick, easy, straightforward steps, I want to introduce my colleague, James Johnson, who is a financial planner at Raymond James, and this is his area of expertise to share a few thoughts, and he is here to take questions from you all too. So with that, James, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Maria, I must admit, I've never heard that comment of a man is not a plan, but I do like that a lot. Well done. That's good work, that is.
I recently learned it.
That's very good. Thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me and allowing me to come along and present to you all. I've done a brief presentation on PowerPoint, and I was told to ensure that it wasn't PowerPoint death. So I'm just going to share my screen with you all, and we can go straight into the presentation. Right, can we all see that properly? I'll take the silence as a yes. So to give you some background on myself, my name's James Johnson. I am financial planner with Raymond James. I've been in the financial services for about 12 years, 6 of those as a financial planner. And the reason why I became a financial planner is actually quite a personal reason. And I do tell all of my clients this because I think it's quite apt. But the purpose I became a financial advisor is because my grandmother received some quite terrible financial advice from a rather well-known firm, and had a loss to the tune of about £50,000. And we went through the rigmarole of complaints and managed to get the money back through the Financial Ombudsman Service. But it made me think, I hate the thought of people not having the knowledge and the know-how to deal with this and being treated and having the rug pulled from underneath them. So I did my exams, became a financial planner, and that's kind of my goal, really, to ensure that all of my clients are fully aware of what's going on and the reasons behind those. So hopefully that gives you a bit of background as to my sort of philosophy and objectives and goals. Now, from an agenda point of view, I'll just briefly go through this. So I'm going to
take you through some statistics around savings. I'm then going to take it back to real basics and talk through the basics of financial planning and how I sort of start off my conversations with my clients. I'll then talk through saving options, which are going to be long-term, short-term options around those and the different products available. I'll then take you through a quick case study and we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. Okay, so statistics. Oh, I wasn't sure if people are talking to me there. So 0.37% is the disposable income of the average household, which I thought was incredibly low. The percentage of assets held inside of investment products is an average of 23.9%. The average household UK savings is £9,600. And the number of people who are 55 years old or higher or older have less than £1,000 is 20% of adults in that age group, which I just think is absolutely astonishing. And this gives you an idea as to the average amount of savings that people in these various different age groups have got in the bank. So the average amount of people over 55 have only got £20,000, and that includes money in pensions, ISAs, and savings accounts. And you've got to think, in about 10-15 years of these people's lives, they're going to be retiring and they've got 20 grand in the bank. It's just absolutely not enough. So quite shocking figures, I think, and it kind of tells a story of the earlier you start saving, and it doesn't have to be a lot each month, but the more you do save, that's going to be compounded interest over the course of the life until you start to use those monies. But it's also going to help you to build up those savings on a much quicker basis as your earnings increase and what have you. So, bringing it back to basics, when I have my first conversation with any client, it's usually a very, very quick conversation, and that's maybe 15 minutes, and I'll say to them, what are we trying to achieve? Are we talking about pensions, retirement, inheritance, whatever it may be? What's the plan here? I'll then give them some homework, and that homework is to think of these two sets of questions. So the first set of questions is, what are you trying to achieve? What's the purpose for this call? What are you trying to get me to help you achieve? When do you want to achieve that goal by? And so the goal might be retirement. It may be that they want to retire in a set period of time. It may be that they want to buy a house, or whatever it may be, and they'll have a date in time that they want to achieve that goal. And they'll probably need to find out how much it's going to cost them to achieve that goal. Okay, so that's the first set of questions. The second set of questions, and this is something that will probably be more around a conversation piece in our next meeting, would be, can you afford to achieve all of those goals? If not, which one's the most important for you? Or if it's going to be tight, what do you need to change in order to be able to achieve those goals? And it may be that you need to change your savings pattern. It may it may be as simple as looking at your utilities and reducing the expenditure on your utilities so you've got more to save. It could really be as simple as that. But those are the two sets of questions that I get all of my clients to think about before we have our initial consultation. The quote there I just think was really, really quite apt. It's from a female financial planner based in the US. Don't think of saving money as a punishment. Think of saving money as a lifestyle change and a means of freedom, which I just think is absolutely perfect, particularly for this setup. So we'll get the questions done, and we'll have our next meeting. We'll then have a conversation around the different products available to you for your savings and your targets. Now, if you're looking at long-term savings options, pensions are the obvious one for long-term savings. It ties money up until you're 55 years old at the earliest, unless you're suffering from serious ill health. But you can access money only at the age of 55. It's incredibly tax efficient. If you are a basic rate taxpayer, you get 20% tax relief on any contribution you pay into that pension. Obviously there's annual limits and what have you, but 20% tax relief on the contribution. If you're a higher rate taxpayer, 40% tax relief on the contribution. If you're an additional rate taxpayer, 45%. So all of a sudden, if you're a higher or additional tax rate, the amount of money that you're getting is almost double the amount you're putting in there. It's an incredibly tax efficient vehicle. And then when you do get to the age of 55, you can take 25% of that pension pot tax free. The rest is taxed as income, depending on the amount that you're drawing from it. So pensions incredibly tax efficient. Property, people either love it or hate it when it comes to investing in property. The benefits are you don't need to have the full value because you can get mortgages to offset the amount that you need to buy the property. Benefits are you'll receive an income, or if not, you'll get somebody else to pay your mortgage. Capital growth on properties are usually pretty impressive, give or take a few years in between. They're not tax efficient, really. If it's a second property, there's additional 3% on the stamp duty. Any income you receive is subject to income tax and what have you. And then on the sale of it, you've got capital gains tax to think about as well. So it's not a very tax efficient way, but it's as I say, it's pretty much Marmite when it comes to people investing in property. And then from an ISA point of view, now ISAs can either be long-term or short-term investments. ISAs are tax efficient in as much as any growth on your investment in an ISA is tax free. Not like pensions where you get tax relief on the contribution. It's purely on the growth. But an ISA is just a wrapper around the money that you've got in there. So you've got the option of having a stocks and shares ISA or a cash ISA, and for those who've got children, you can have a junior ISA where you can save money for your children. There is a limit on how much you can put into an ISA. So 20,000 per year for the junior ISA. It's just gone up to 9,000 a year. But any growth on that is tax free, and then you can draw it completely tax free whenever you want. It's very liquid, and as I say, you can use that for short term or for long term investments. Hence the reason why it's on my short term investment options list. You've then got general investment accounts. So these are again not very tax efficient, but they can be managed in a more tax efficient way. So you can hold the same investments that you have in an ISA in a general investment account, and they're just the growth on those investments are subject to capital gains tax. But there's a way in which you can manage that and move the money over years using your ISA allowance into your ISA. So there's ways in which you can mitigate that. There's fixed term deposits. You can have a fixed term deposit account with the likes of Investec. They offer quite impressive fixed term deposits. The issue with that is it's tied in for that period. They usually go up to 6 years and not much more than that. Sometimes people offer 10 years. The fixed term deposit accounts you can get quite reasonable interest on them. And if you wrap a fixed term deposit in an ISA, it will be tax free as well, the growth, as opposed to just holding it. It could be subject to capital gains tax. And then you've got your general savings accounts, which you can hold money in for sort of instant access as well. So there's, those gives you a bit of an idea as to what investment options are available for those. You could go much more exotic and use the likes of a venture capitalist trust or an EIS, which is probably outside of the realms of this presentation, and they receive tax benefits for in their own sort of right for various different things. So maybe we can cover that off on another session. But for this presentation, these are the ones that we're going to be focusing on really. Now, for the case study, I've kept this quite simple, but we're going to take through the plan for this lady. So we've got Sarah. She's 45 years old. She currently has a salary of £150,000, which gives her a monthly income of £7,500 net of tax. Of that £7,500, she spends about £4,000. So that's her cost of living. So she can save about £3,500 a month. She's got two goals. The first goal is she wants to move house, and she estimates she's going to need £100,000 to move house. And her second goal is for retirement in 22 years. She thinks she needs an income of £40,000 a year to retire. Now, it's important to stress that with this case study, we're taking no consideration of inflation, and we're taking no consideration of investment growth. We're talking purely in today's money, okay? So, quick look at the facts. She's got a surplus income of £3,500 a month. She's a cautious attitude to risk, so we're kind of ignoring the inflation and the investment growth. She needs £100,000 in 8 years' time for the house move. She needs a £40,000 annual income in 22 years' time. She currently has a pension with savings of £50,000 in, and she will have a full state pension, which provides an income of £9,110 a year at age 67. Okay, those are the facts. Really nice and simple. Hopefully that's easy to keep. So the simple route for the money for her house, £100,000. We know she's got £3,500 a month to save. So we can maximise her ISA allowances of £20,000 a year. Saving that over 5 years, she's got £100,000 for her property. Okay. So then we're looking at goal number 2. She needs an income of £40,000 a year in 22 years' time. She will have her full state pension, which is £9,110. So we can deduct that straight away. Okay, so we're now looking to get the £30,000, or just over £30,000 a year on top of basic state pension. So we know that she's got her £3,500 a month of surplus income. So on top of the £20,000 that she's saving in the ISA for the house, she's got an additional £22,000 of surplus income per year. Now, because she is a higher rate taxpayer, she can use that money, pay it straight into a pension, and she would be receiving 40% tax relief on those contributions. Okay, so her £22,000 per year all of a sudden is £30,800 a year with the tax relief, going straight into her pension. After 5 years, she doesn't need to save for the property anymore. So that £20,000 that has been saved for the property can go into a separate ISA to segregate the savings for the different goals. That's another £20,000 for 17 years going into an ISA, and that's the amounts that she'll be able to save over the course of the next 22 years until she reaches retirement age. Okay, everybody with me so far? I can only see 2 people nodding, so I can't see any other faces. So we've got full savings so far in 22 years' time. She's got just over £1 million in her, split between her ISAs and her pension. Now, what we need to look is, what's the most tax efficient way of generating this £40,000 per year that she needs for retirement? So as I said, she's got her state pension. That's £9,110 per annum. The state pension is taxable but never taxed. And what I mean by that is it starts to use up your personal allowance for income tax purposes. Okay, so that £9,110 would be subject to income tax rules, but it's within that £12,500 of personal allowance that you have for your income. She can then take £5,500 of tax-free cash. So you'll remember I mentioned that at retirement or at age 55, you can take 25% of your pension fund completely tax-free. So that's your tax-free cash. So she deducts £5,500 of tax-free cash from her pension each year, and on top of the state pension of £9,110, she can take a further £3,390 of taxable income from her pension and that uses up her full personal allowance of £12,500. So she's already got £18,000 of tax-free income coming through from the state pension plus the money from her pension. The ISA money that she has would then be able to balance out the additional to £40,000. So she can draw a further £22,000 from her ISA completely tax-free, which would give her full £40,000 a year of income with no tax to pay on any of that income. Now, obviously that is not sustainable for the full term of her life. You know, the money from the ISAs will run out at some stage. She's only got 340 grand in there. So what you would do is you would make sure that you are reviewing that on an annual basis with your financial planner to make sure that it is still sustainable in that period of time. If it's not, you know, what's a more tax efficient way? Plus, you've got rules changes which happen pretty much every year in respect of income tax and what have you. So it is important that you are reviewing that on an annual basis. But at least we have a plan in place, which we've got something to work towards. And that is tax efficient planning at its finest, if I'm quite honest. But do not take that as advice. This is not advice. This is purely information planning, and I would strongly suggest you speak to a financial planner in order to make sure it's suitable for you. But that is my presentation. Hopefully it's given you some food for thought. Let me open up to some questions.
Great, thank you so much, James. My goodness, those figures on the first slide, sobering thought. I mean, what was it? At average age of 55, average savings are £1,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that just says it in itself, really. And you know, I would say we're not here to scare anyone. That really is not that's really not our mission here. But it's really just to give us that opportunity just to take stock, and I'm sure that some of what you've heard you may already have put into practice already, but you know, and if you haven't, or if you have, then you know, please do take the opportunity whilst we may have a bit of time over lockdown to really take another look. And as you said, James, it is constant review, right? I should take my own advice, really, to be honest. And I can't say I put a date in the diary per annum that I should review my own financial breakdown. It's we're going to kick off with questions. Do people want to stay in the room? Do they want to go to breakout rooms? Like, hands up for staying in the room. I think, well, those who've got their camera on, they want to stay in the room. So all good. We'll stay in the room. Shall we kick off with Jade? You had a question.
Yeah, and I just saw a question came through in the chat actually, which is quite similar to mine. It's how do you pick an IFA, and can you give an indication of a fee structure for different types of advice?
Yeah, so when it comes to picking a financial advisor, there are there's a lot of things to consider. You know, what service do you require? Are you looking for a mortgage, some mortgage advice, in which case there's a mortgage advisor that specialises in that? Are you looking at pension advice? Again, inheritance tax planning. You know, there's so many different areas of financial planning. It's very difficult for any one advisor to be able to do it all. You know, we are independent financial advisors, so we all have our own knowledge levels in the different areas. So it would be important to make sure that you know what area of advice you need, and therefore you can find an advisor with that as a specialism potentially. Other things are, as I say, I mentioned mortgage advice. Well, there's mortgage advisors who are restricted on that. But do you want an independent advisor or a restricted advisor? Because it could be that, when I say restricted, there's two different forms of restricted. It could be that they can only advise in a particular area, or it could be that they can only advise on a particular branded product. For example, like an advisor for a bank, they can only sell their bank products. So, that's something else to take into consideration. Other things are, do you have a good connection with the individual that you're speaking with? You've got to trust this person to make the right decisions for you and to understand what you're trying to achieve. Similarly, that advisor may have a particular client focus. I've worked with female advisors in the past who will only work with female clients. There's some advisors who will only take clients with a particular value of investable assets. So you've got to make sure that it works for you as well as working for the financial advisor. The level of experience that they may have, do you need a chartered financial planner or do you need somebody who's diploma qualified? A lot of people are chartered financial planners because they're very good at exams, but they may not be very good with people. So there's all these different things to take into consideration. Cost is a huge one. Every different financial advisor will have their own charging structures, and I know, that was the other question. A lot of financial advisors will charge on a percentage of the amount that they're investing. Others will have their fixed fee. Some will charge for the advice and then the implementation of the advice. So everybody's got their own charging structures. To give you an example, some will charge 1%. 1% for the setup of their advice, and then will also charge 1% per annum for the management of the assets that you're giving them. Others may charge 2 or 3% for the implementation. So it really depends on the advisor, and that's definitely something to bring up with them. Since RDR came into play, it is imperative that all charges are broken down to you before you implement any advice in the suitability letter. So you'll know what the charges are, but you need to make sure that you ask that question before anything sort of, you don't want to waste your time as well. So it's a question to get out the way in the first meeting. There's a couple of websites that are really good for finding financial advisors. You can use one website, it's called unbiased.com. And you can put your postcode in and the service that you need, and it will link you with an advisor in your area. Or you can look at financialplanning.org.uk, which is another similar service, but both really good. One question that you definitely should be asking before you even meet with them is, do they have an up-to-date SPS, which is a statement of professional standing? For any financial advisor, you've got to meet a particular level of hours of continuing professional development in order to have your SPS renewed. So if they haven't got an SPS in place, that means they aren't regulated for that year to do the advice. So make sure they've got a statement of professional standing in place, and make sure it's not expired. You can ask to see their certificate to prove it's in date.
So useful. Thank you, James.
No worries.
So we've got some other questions that are coming in now. Cynthia, should I ask for you, or do you want to take yourself off mute? Okay. All right. So a question from Cynthia. Given the very low interest rates, what alternative is there for a cash ISA that is tax efficient?
Well, you can use a stocks and shares ISA. You don't have to invest in stocks and shares. It's effectively an investment ISA. And within a stocks and shares ISA, you could hold a fixed term deposit account, which would then give you a fixed level of interest over a course of a period. The only issue with those is they are tied in for that set period. So it really depends on it depends on two things. How long have you got to invest the money in whatever it is invested in? And secondly, what is the end goal with that money? Is there a particular purchase that you have in plan, or is it to provide you with an income, for example?
Thank you, James. Sorry. Actually, I already have ISAs.
Sure.
It's just I wanted to know what I could do with my cash ISA. because and to make sure it's still tax efficient, because obviously it's tax free. And because the rates are very low, is there anything else, or I just have to keep it in the cash ISA? I don't want to put it into an investment so that I have to pay tax on it.
Well, no, you can switch it from a cash ISA to and move it into an investment ISA or a stocks and shares ISA.
I've already got those.
Yeah, but it wouldn't use it. So if you've already got one, you could move it into one that you already have open.
Right, but I want to be able to use that money, say, in 6 months' time or a month's time. I want it to be easily accessible.
Okay. If you're going to be using that money within the next 3 years, I would strongly suggest you don't look at investing it in anything, and I would probably suggest holding it in a cash ISA. I know the interest rates are not very good, but you definitely wouldn't want to have any risk on that money, particularly at the moment with the volatility that's going on.
Okay, thank you.
James, could you give a proxy for the interest rate on the fixed term deposit? You mentioned it's pretty good. Well, what does it mean, pretty good, in current conditions?
Sure. So I don't know if Investec offer these anymore, but they have fixed term deposits, which I think their 3-year one provided 15% return over 3 years. But there's criteria that it's got to meet in order to provide that return. At the time, it was dependent on the value of the FTSE 100 at point of deposit and point of exit. And if the point of exit was 1p above the point of entry, then you would qualify for the return. But it was set dates, so it was set in. That was the point of entry, and it was 3 years to the anniversary. So it had to be, you couldn't choose to exit at a particular time. It was set. So and you couldn't access the money at any point between that.
That's okay. Fixed term makes it clear to me, so I understand that. Thank you. Sure. 15% sounds quite appealing anyways.
Yeah, it does. It does. The longer ones provided much higher returns as well. I think they had a 6-year one, which was 42%.
Is that cumulative over the period, or is it annualized?
No, that's it. It's just a fixed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still good.
Great.
It's very good. Yeah.
Right. Karen, you also had a couple of questions, I see. Did you want to take yourself on mute, or I can ask them for you? Okay, sure. All right. So, by the way, everyone, I'm just literally going down the list. I'm not pre-selecting any of these questions. So it's literally as they're coming into the chat box. So Karen asks, advisors tend not to be interested in giving advice to clients with a low level of current savings or earnings capability. Where would you advise those people to go?
I suppose my question is, what do you consider a low earnings potential and low level of savings? Everybody's got their own opinion as to what that is.
Is there any kind of eligibility really for anyone to approach you?
Sure. Well, I've always suggested that if anybody's got if anybody has a value of savings that they want to invest in something, I've always suggested that the lower limit should really be about £30,000. And the reason I suggest that is because the cost of the advice outweighs the benefit that you would receive. Okay. So it's not that they don't want to deal with people who've got less than that as a value. It's that they're not going to add any benefit to you by charging you their minimum fee to provide you with that advice. So that's kind of where I have always sat. Now, if you've got less than that, then it may be that you're either you look at building up to a value where you're going to receive a benefit by using a financial advisor, or that advisor can help you to set up a savings plan, and they potentially have the way in which they can charge their fee over the course of a year. That was something that I've done with one of my previous firms, where we had clients who wanted to start out saving into a pension, and they could only contribute 250 quid a month as a minimum, but we would charge our minimum fee. So that's kind of where I sit on that.
Fantastic. Okay, and just somebody about to say something. No, I think it was background noise. Karen, just another one of your questions, more in terms of accessibility. Do you have any restrictions in terms of travel to see clients? How do you go about in terms of actually having your conversations?
So my role with Raymond James is very much a remote service. So all of my meetings are done through telephone, email, or Zoom, like this meeting. But if you feel like you need that face to face, then I would strongly suggest you find an advisor who's pretty local to you, probably within 10-15 miles. Because then obviously you can go to them or they can come to you. If you've got something that's particularly difficult, then it may be that you can't find somebody local to you that has the expertise in what you need. So that may be a bit more complicated, but it's worthwhile speaking to the advisors who are pretty local to you to find out whether they can provide the advice in the areas you need.
Great. Fantastic. So I guess it's just really a case of assessing really what are logistics really in terms of reaching out to you.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, as I mentioned, if you use the website unbiased.com or financialplanning.org.uk, when you put your postcode in, it will bring up the financial planning services that are local to you. So I think you can put a distance restraint on that on the website, but useful websites.
Great. Okay. Maybe I'll ask 2 questions because we are nearing the hour. So Loved It is asking, what's your view on buying a second property within a limited company to reduce tax?
Yeah, there's no reason why not. It would probably depend on the amount of income you're going to receive from the property, because there's a cost to running a limited company, and the accountancy fees and what have you. That's not necessarily an issue for those who are accountants, but it really depends on the amount of income that you're going to be receiving as rental income. If you've got 2 or 3 or 4 different properties that you're going to, absolutely, for a limited company, do it. If it's just one property, then I would suggest it's dependent on the amount of income you're going to be receiving and whether it's worth it.
Great. Okay, and last one, I think, unless we really want to go on for ever and ever. Okay, what is this question here? Just seen it, 1 second. Oh, right, here we are. It's from Belanley. Is there a restriction on the number of pension accounts one can have? No.
You can have as many pensions as you wish. I had a client, in a previous role, I had a client who had 15 pension schemes. And it took me about 3 months to analyse them and managed to consolidate them into, managed to consolidate them into 2. But there's no restriction on the number of schemes you can have. No. I would suggest for maintenance purposes you try and restrict that, but no restrictions.
James, just you talked about fixed term deposits. So, and the interest you get on that is the return you get on those are pretty attractive. So, are these institutions who are offering this product are capital safe? Are they secure enough to protect your capital? How is an investor covered?
Sure. So the Investec ones that I mentioned are there's zero risk to your capital unless Investec go into liquidation. They're purely, they are 100% capital safe unless the company has issues. Because it's effectively a savings account, it's it's more down to financial services compensation scheme, which will cover up to £85,000.
So like the life insurance, I think even if the company you have taken insurance with has gone bust, the insurer is covered with the financial ombudsman. So does the government has any financial security for the investors when they invest into retirement plans like pensions or any?
Well, so that's quite a big question. So you've got the financial services compensation scheme that covers deposit accounts up to £85,000 per investor. You've then got they do cover the cost of some investment products, but there's restrictions and requirements and criteria that they've got to meet. When it comes to investments, you're only really covered in respect of the product provider, not the investments. So, if you're investing money in a pension, the value of your pension could go up and down dependent on the performance of what you're invested in. You won't be able to take out an insurance against that.
Okay, and these pensions are like, again, can come into different packages, like high returns, low return kind of thing, or like high risk, I mean.
Well, that's down to the investments within the pension. So the pension is purely the vehicle or the wrapper around the money within it. The risk on the investments is completely down to what you choose to invest within that pension. If you're talking about a workplace pension, they'll put you in a this is excluding defined benefit schemes, because that's completely different. And a whole presentation worth of the conversation. But if you're talking about a workplace pension, they'll put you in a default scheme, which is usually a lifestyle fund, starting off at something around a balanced portfolio. So maybe a 5 out of 10, maybe a 6 out of 10, depending on your age. And that will start moving into more capital preservation mode 5 to 10 years before the scheme's retirement age for you. But that's just where they would put you in, unless you choose to go into something different. And that could be, you choose to go into much higher risk, and therefore the risk versus reward conversation starts to kick in. Or you may choose to be more cautious than that and go into something much more sort of capital preservation from the start.
So for
James and Cynthia, and sorry, Meenal, I'm going to interrupt you there because we're getting to towards the end of the hour. Kristel, do you want to do your wrap up and then I'll finish? Or
yeah, absolutely. I mean, goodness, James, I mean, I could just tell from the questions and just the atmosphere in the room. There are people are edging to really ask you questions, and of course we only have limited time. So if you do have questions, I mean, this is the whole point of this series, to just give you a taster. So if you do have further questions, please, by all means, reach out to James and Cynthia direct. James put his details there, but it's also on the website as well, with the events. All I would say is that don't treat this series as a theory. As much as it is interesting and it is good to be current with what's going on there, we do want to encourage you to also move forward in terms of taking action, because that really is this is really how we actually achieve our financial goals. So yeah, that was it from me. Anything else from the team? Can I just throw it out to the team if they want any closing remarks? Maria, you put your hand up.
Don't want to be poor when you're old.
No, I don't want to be poor when I'm old. I think I need more than £1,000 when I'm 55. That's all I'm going to say.
Maria, does that mean don't make a man your plan?
This is another topic for another series.
No, that's take care of yourself and your interests, because when we are young, it's very easy to think about the now and then we wake up and we're 60 something, we cannot work, but we have to. So it's not a good place to be.
Brilliant. Listen, guys, James, you were brilliant. Thank you very much. Really interesting. And I hope some people will reach out to you. Cynthia, top E2W member, and a mentor as well. I noticed, I think Martina joined the call, who's your mentee within E2W. Thank you. I'd like to ask one question. How do you manage to sit in the same seat simultaneously?
I know. Sorry, these backgrounds were probably confusing, but I had people walking behind me at home, so I wanted to put a professional background on. James and I had the same thought.
And listen, I hope, obviously that was a more holistic view of financial planning.
Yeah.
There are some areas, what is an ISA, what's a pension, what's an investment, and maybe, if you were happy to do so and the team are happy to do so, maybe we can invite you back, to future sessions to just sort of deep dive into some of those other areas as well, which I think would be interesting.
Yeah.
I see some
I think we'd be happy to, and thank you so much for inviting James and me to join you today. It's been great to get to know some of you. A great effort to have these sessions. What a value add.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invite. It's been fun.
Okay, wonderful. So listen, I'm going to say thank you and a big clap to James and Cynthia, to Kristel, Jade, Maria, and Meenal. Thank you as well. The next E2Wealthier session will be in about 4 weeks' time, I think, so the middle of August. Watch out for that. Also, we have, just plugging E2W a little bit, we have a session tomorrow night on
artificial intelligence.
Thank you very much, Katie. You really haven't got. You're brilliant. My mind just boggled then. We have a session tomorrow night at 6:30, I think, Katie, is that right?
Yeah.
On artificial intelligence, which is something that's going to affect us all. Come along and join that. We've got some great speakers lined up on that as well. Thank you all for your support, and see you at next week's coffee break, which we've yet to plan. So if anybody's got some ideas in terms of how we can inspire or bring one of your hobbies along, let's do that. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all. See you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.